what we're taking a look at here is solving trig equations without using a calculator. So what we have is we're solving for angles that are between 0 and 360 degrees. Basically, this piece just tells us, are we using radians or are we using degrees? In this case, we would be using degrees. And we're solving the trig equation secant of theta equals 2. So we're looking for the angles that have a secant value of 2. And from here, the first thing we really want to do is we want to convert this equation into something we know how to work with. And we don't really know how to solve for secant, but we know that secant and cosine are reciprocals of one another. So really what I'm going to go through and do is I'm going to change this to 1 over cosine of theta instead of it making, instead of going through and trying to solve secant of theta. Now I can work with this because I know how to solve for cosine of theta. Now from here what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to multiply each side by cosine of theta. On this left hand side, if I have cosine of theta over cosine of theta, they should cancel one another out. What I do to one side, I do to the other side. So right now what I have is 1 equals 2 times cosine of theta. And from here what I can do is trying to get the theta by itself. I divide each side by 2. So what that gives me, cosine theta equals positive 1/2. So what I'm looking for are cosine or angles that have a cosine value or an x value of 1/2. And really the best piece or the best tool for this is going to be my chart. And for now I'm just going to go through and fill out the cosine portion of the chart. I can't even fit the 90 on there. I'd have 1 root 3 over 2 root 2 over 2 1/2, and then cosine of 90 would be 0. So what I'm looking for is angles that have an x value of 1/2, which I find at 60 degrees. So right now what that's telling me is, alright, I know 60 degrees is going to be one of my solutions, but if I think about it, when I look at this, it tells me, alright, 60 degrees in the first quadrant, so I know this is going to have an x value of 1/2. Now what also should have an x value of 1/2 would be an angle in the fourth quadrant, because down here cosine is positive. There should be some angle down here that when we look at the unit circle should have an x value of positive 1/2 as well. So what we have to think about is we have to think about what angle makes that true. That's going to have a reference angle of 60 but be in the fourth quadrant. That's going to end up being 300 degrees. What we have to think about, fourth quadrant angle, 60 degree reference angle, that means it's 60 degrees away from 360. That's really where we get our 300. And really what's important with that is understanding, is the value we're looking for positive or negative, and looking for the second solution. Because the reason why we have the second solution is if we think about the cosine curve, that looks like this, and we go through, this is just one period of the cosine curve. We'll say, I know this is kind of off, we'll say those are our zeros. But what we're looking for is, we're saying when our x value equals 1/2. So if I draw a line at 1/2, I have one value here, which ended up being 60 degrees, and then I should have some other angle, which also has an x value of 1/2, which is where we really got our 300 from.